Mitakuyape. My name is Lestina Saul, and I am representing Nebraska Urban Indian Health Coalition and Project Beacon Omaha to bring you some important information regarding domestic violence and sex trafficking in Indian country. Let me begin by saying that there are some complex similarities between the two. Domestic violence perpetuators and sex traffickers often use the same power and control tactics to coerce and groom their victims. Some of these tactics include psychological manipulation, physical abuse, verbal abuse, harassment, stalking, humiliation, intimidation, physical and financial control, sexual predation, using children to control their victims, and using substances to control the victims. Drugs are used to induce compliancy, create dependency, cope with the stress of being trafficked or abused, and to incapacitate a victim. In some cases of domestic violence and sex trafficking, the victims go on to be murdered and missing indigenous women cases. Some of the places that are targeted venues for sex trafficking are the I-90 highway across South Dakota, big sporting events, casinos, man camps, and drug dealers. Trafficking of illegal drugs and human trafficking often happen together. Drug traffickers may also be transporting people as another source of money. Human traffickers can use drugs as bait to recruit people who have a substance use disorder. They can use drugs to force a victim to obey their orders, work harder, or for longer hours. Commonly used substances are tobacco, alcohol, hallucinogens, stimulants, sedatives, marijuana, heroin, and methamphetamine are particularly addictive substances. When a victim seeks services, it is important to let them know that there are options for medication-assisted treatment, which can aid their recovery from trafficking and substance abuse. The statistics are grim for a Native American and Alaska Native woman. 4 out of 5 will be abused at some point in their lifetime. That means only one of us escapes these atrocities. Traditionally, Native women were thought of as sacred, and some tribes were matriarchal societies. One can assume that we are repeating a cycle of violence that started with the genocide of our people. The abuse suffered in boarding schools injected a cycle and a high tolerance for trauma that has cycled through the generations and surfaces in our families and communities today as substance abuse, having a higher tolerance for abuse, and suicide, just to mention a few. The average life expectancy is 7 years for sex trafficking victims once they start being trafficked. Those years have a profound effect on their mental, emotional, and physical health. The odds of escape are 1 in 100. 1 in 5 youth who run away or are homeless are a victim of trafficking. For victims of domestic violence, it takes an average of 8 to 9 attempts to leave their abuser before they successfully leave. These victims are also in need of services for healing. More than 1 in 3 American Indian and Alaska Native female victims, or 38%, and more than 1 in 6 American Indian and Alaska Native male victims, or 17%, were unable to get the services that they needed. American Indian and Alaska Native women were 2.5 times as likely as non-Hispanic, white-only women to lack access to needed services. These statistics raise awareness and understanding of violence against American Indian and Alaska Native victims. The care required to help these victims recover is relatively the same type of services that include the following: safety planning, help in obtaining stable housing, substance use disorder treatment, mental health treatment or services, healthcare provisions, employment, economic security, healing, continued support, and achieving an overall sense of well-being. It takes a community to heal from abuse and trafficking, and nobody should have to go about it alone. At Nebraska Urban Indian Health Coalition, we are committed to helping victims move from survivor to thriver.